Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. And so that today's video, we're going to be ranking all 89 brawlers in the game right now, all the way from the very worst all the way up to the very best in a tier list. So this is from a lot of data from me playing ranked all the way up to masters, playing pretty much solo, and then of course competitive data. So this tier list will be for the real hardcore players, and metas will differ depending on your skill levels. So for example, the meta will differ if you're in like mythic, if you're in diamond, etc. But this is for the best of the best, the pro ranks, etc. So let's just dive into it straight away. So starting off with the F tier, starting off with Doug. Of course, nothing has changed about Doug. He's got no rework. He still sucks. He's only really good on those bushy maps and Brawl, and that's it. Next we have Bonnie. Do I even need to say anything about Bonnie? Nothing has changed. If anything, her gadget cooldowns are actually too long, so she's probably got worse. I need to fix her bug, which used to allow you to shoot a shot and then super, which allowed you just to get back into your cannon form a lot better, but they've still not fixed it, so she's still trash. Next we have Pam. So again, she didn't gain anything from the gadget changes, or of course she hasn't got a hypercharge just yet, but she's going to get a hypercharge in the next update. But still, now her damage is way too inconsistent and she just feeds everybody else's super. Next in the F tier we have Mo. So I might be a little harsh on Mo, but at the same time I see him 0 times in competitive. I don't even see him on ladder anymore. He really has fallen off. Those nerfs really caught up to him, and of course he's one of the only few brawlers without a hypercharge now, so of course he's not going to be the best. Next in the F tier we have Sam. So Sam is just the easiest brawler to kill in the world right now. He doesn't have the same potential he used to have like a year ago, where you could always pick Sam as like a late pick in ranked to counter low DPS brawlers. Well, even low DPS brawlers now have a hypercharge or just have got damage inflation, so Sam doesn't have a purpose in the meta. He's terrible, but watch out for the hypercharge in a couple of weeks time because it looks potentially broken. Next to the F tier we have Edgar. So I know straight away people are going to kill me for this opinion, but the gadget change absolutely killed Edgar in my opinion. Both gadgets have over a 20-second charge rate, I believe, which is insane. And then of course all of his counters have a slower cooldown in gadgets. And then you've also got to consider as well, normally Edgar would thrive once those brawlers would run out of gadgets. So, you know, for example, Piper would run out of knockback gadgets. Well, now they're always going to have a knockback. So Edgar for me is absolutely terrible, absolutely fallen off. We have a pretty stacked F tier because Charlie is up next. And again, Charlie hasn't been buffed with all of these changes whatsoever. Hypercharge sucks. She deals no damage. She's just a free kill at the minute. And lastly in the F tier we have Clancy. So not what people are going to say, he's not actually that bad. Well, that's because at lower levels and when you play Brawl, he's actually still pretty good because you face Mortis and all of his tanks. But in competitive, he's not a good enough tank counter because by the time you get to that 3rd level, you pretty much lost the game, because again there's just better tank counters at that with hypercharges, etc. He's just not needed. He's definitely fallen off. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the D tier brawlers. So most of these will have a really small niche. Sometimes they can be okay, but most of them have been killed with the gadget change. And the first one's going to be Brawl. So it might be surprising because Stomper essentially got better, so Brawl should be better. But if anything, I mean, Heist isn't in the rank rotation right now, but I don't really feel the biggest difference in Brawl, to be honest, because it's just better gadgets that are just more spammier than his Stomper gadgets. So yeah, I just don't think he's really improved that much. Next up we have Fang. So Fang didn't get any changes with the gadget rework really. If anything, he got worse because of it. Again, you'd never see him as even like a late pick into snipers, because even though snipers have potential to counter a Fang, his hypercharge takes forever to charge. He's just not good anymore. Next up in the D tier we have Ems. So Ems again wasn't really affected by all of these changes. The good thing about Ems though is that now she has unlimited knockback, so she isn't as frail against assassins as she used to be, but still she really lacks the damage as a tank counter. She gets outranged by so many different lanes. She's just not good anymore. Next in the D tier we have Meg. So Meg does have a use case in Brawl hockey, but it's not really competitive, is it? But at least in rank she's okay, but that's the only reason why you'd use her, for pressure. Elsewhere she just gets outranged, cooked. Yeah, she's not good anymore. Next in the D tier we have Gale. So I told you guys months and months ago Gale was not good anymore. Ever since he got that big nerf to his supercharge rate, I knew he'd fallen off, but people continued to play him, and now they finally realized that Gale isn't good. You can't cycle his hypercharge anymore. It takes forever to get it, so he's just, there's way better tank counters out there, so what is the point using him? I guess he's still okay with his slow start power, but even then, you know, his gadget rework as well kind of killed him. It's not good anymore. So in the D tier we have Chuck. So I think he's fallen down from the C tier, mainly because people know how to counter him effectively in Heist, and I've been saying for the longest time I think he's been overrated in Heist. And then you also got to consider as well his niche in like Hot Zone and a few other instances. I think it's just too many hypercharge brawlers in the game right now. He's just not good 1 versus 1, and of course when he's not good in Heist, he's just going to be terrible across the board. Next up, we have Chester. So Chester is so incredibly mid right now. He has been ever since he got those couple of nerfs a couple of updates ago, but he has got a hype charge incoming, which looks really, really good. So maybe with the hype charge, he could be looking at B A tier or absolutely D tier. He's not being picked in competitive for several months now. Next up, we have Grom. So at the lower level, Grom will always be really good because people just don't know how to open their eyes. But I think he's still like a good late pick in knockout. I see a lot of the time, but then I don't know, he's just still too inconsistent for me. At least he's getting a hypercharge soon, which looks pretty good as well. So expect him to rise once that comes out. Next up in the D tier, we have Lily. So Lily was absolutely killed with a gadget rework, and I'm celebrating because it was so annoying. The reason why she was so good is effectively, you know, you had like 4 of these vanish gadgets, and what you could do, you could pop a gadget, you could end up on someone's face, and then you could kill them. But then when you get into trouble, you could then just pop your vanish gadget again. But of course now you can't do that with a gadget rework because it takes like 23 seconds to charge this gadget up, which is effectively just killed the way you play Lily. She's not good anymore. Next with the D tier, we have Willow. So not much to really say about her. She hasn't got a hyper charge yet. Her super is pretty lackluster and still pretty hard to hit. There's just way better throwers, and she's not good. Next with the D tier, we have Shelly. So I just don't really see much use case for Shelly anymore. Even on those bushy maps, I just think she gets outranged and outclassed. Her hypercharge really has fallen off, considering every brawler in the game's got a hypercharge, and hers is just a bigger super, which isn't good enough anymore. So of course she's going to fall down. Next we have Miko. So since the HP buff a couple of updates ago, he definitely is a good late pick and knockout and maybe some bounty maps, but still overall I don't think he's good enough. He doesn't have enough damage, and of course his hype charge isn't the greatest. So in the D tier, we have BB. So that's that brief amount of time just before the update where her healing gadget was at like 10 or 12 seconds, something really slow, which was going to get spammed out. That actually got nerfed before the update. So I'd say nothing's really changed about BB. If anything, she's got worse because she just feeds so many different tank counters. She's just not good enough. Next up, we have Spike. So you know Spike is bad in the meta when even your bad randoms are just not picking Spike anymore. Even with Curveball, nobody is playing Spike. So if the bad randoms are playing Spike, if the competitive players aren't playing Spike, he's obviously really trash. He's only usable in sneaky fields with fertilized star power. That's the only use case for him. And lastly in the D tier, we have Jessie. So again, there's a couple of brawlers in the D tier which a few noobs will probably think are much higher, like Jessie, Spike, etc. But these brawlers do not get played in competitive whatsoever. Jessie's so fallen off. She's not been seen in competitive for at least 4, maybe even 6 months. She's not even good in Heist anymore. She's not good in Hot Zone anymore. So what is she good at? She's pretty bad right now. So now we're going to move on to the C tier brawlers. So most of these are pretty balanced or need like a slight buff for them to be a little bit better in the meta. So starting off with Dynamite. So I think he's definitely fallen down the rankings because his satchel charge gadget takes like 22 seconds to charge, which is insane when you think about it. He still gets a lot of stuns, but when you think of other brawlers which have a lot slower cooldown, they're just a lot better in the meta, of course, because they can just click green button a lot more effectively. So I just don't really see much point in Dynamite anymore, because if you miss one gadget, well, you're kind of screwed for those next 20 seconds because you can get ran down really easily. Next with the C tier, we have Tara. So she's got a little bit better because she's able to spam her Tara pet. But at the same time, I just don't really see her at all, even in Gem Grab Brawl. So when you don't see her there, where else are you going to see her? She's not really the greatest. Her hypercharge is decent, but again, it's only really effective at low level. Next on the C tier, we have Sprout. So he hasn't really been buffed with all of these changes. He's still really good at Knockout and Bounty. You know, he has some really good maps like Bell's Rock. But still, as time goes on, there's just more aggressive ideas. And especially with such an aggressive healer meta, he just can't keep up. Next on the C tier, we have Shade. So Shade was a really fit brawler upon release. Of course, I said he was going to be like S tier. Everybody said he was going to be S tier. He's only good on a select few maps because, of course, the more open the map, he has such a limited range. But I will say he has got a bit better because he's able to spam out his long arms, which helps him cycle his super. I just think it takes too long for him to cycle his super. If they buff that a little bit, he'll be very, very strong. Next up, we have Jackie. So she's gone from the D tier to the C tier because you're able to spam out her pneumatic booster gadget out a lot more. Again, this was going to be like a 10-second, 12-second cooldown. She was going to be broken if that was going to reach the real game. Luckily, it got nerfed before it got released. But yeah, she's got a bit better, but I still don't see her much in competitive because, of course, she has very limited range. Next one, C, we have Primo. So it's starting to fall down a bit in the meta for me. Could easily be D tier as well. He doesn't have the same punch that he used to in terms of damage, but he's still a really good tank counter. At the same time, he's only really playable in Brawl right now and a few cases in Heist. Next one, C, we have Colt. So Colt, I could have easily put in the D tier as well, mainly because I'm not even even seen him as much as I used to in Heist. I will say Speed Loader gadget has made him a little bit more toxic, but at the same time, like I said, in competitive, he just wasn't being used in Heist. So if he's not being used in Heist, of course he's not good in Brawl, Gem Grab, etc. He kind of in this weird period where he's not good anymore. Next one in C tier, we have Mortis. So I'm actually starting to see Mortis a lot more as a late pick in ranked. His Hypercharge is still one of the best in the game. The gadget reworked kind of helped him, kind of didn't. I don't know, but again, it just depends on whether you have really low ping with Mortis, if you can make him work or not. So again, he's still a good brawler, mainly because of that Hypercharge. Next one in C tier, we have Buzz. So it's starting to get to that period where Buzz is starting to feel a little bit underwhelming right now. His Hypercharge is definitely hard carrying him. Also, I think there's a bit more use case for his long stun star power now, but at the same time, I still think there's just better tanks out there. Next, we have Rosa. So she's gone from like the D tier to the C tier, mainly because of this gadget rework where you can just spam grow light gadgets and just make it so every map is Snake Prairie. So of course that's really good, and if the enemy doesn't have like any ability to break up in the grass, break up in the walls, etc., then she's just going to be so toxic. But at the same time, sometimes that can work against you. So I don't know, she's a bit more effective now. Next one in C tier, we have Bo. So he recently got a Hypercharge. I thought he was going to make much more of an impact in the meta, but it does take a long time to cycle through to his Hypercharge. It's nearly 3 supers. And again, the meta is just too aggressive for him a lot of the time. So if Bo's going to be bad for the majority of the game, of course, like the Hypercharge isn't going to really make up for it because it's not like done broken either. So I think C tier, I still feel like people might be underrating him a little bit. So in C tier, we have Crow. So again, Crow is only good in Heist. His Hypercharge, of course, is one of the reasons why he's even effective at Heist, because it can wipe off 50% of the Heist safe with the carrying Crow star power. But outside of that, you know, he's not really usable elsewhere. So like once he was usable on gem grabbing competitive, and that's literally it, because he just doesn't deal enough damage to keep up with his aggressive meta. Next up in the C tier, we have Ruff. So I kind of wanted to put Ruffs in the B tier maybe, but at the same time, like his gadget spam with his rockets is really annoying in gem grab, Brawl, and a few other instances. At the same time, he's so easy to face in a 1 versus 1. He's so squishy and doesn't have the damage to keep up, and his Hypercharge still is pretty weird, because when you think about it, his Hypercharge, say someone's already got the Hypercharge charge, well, what's the point of picking up that Hypercharge treat? It doesn't even charge up your super. So it's just some few weird interactions that just don't make him good. Next in the C tier, we have Eve. So I think Eve has fell off loads in this meta. Hypercharge was really toxic last meta. I think I put her in the A tier. And yeah, I just don't see Eve anymore. For me, I just don't really see much point using her. I mean, she's good in like out in the open and maybe like a few other maps, but again, she's probably better on ladder. I just don't really see her much in competitive anymore. Next in the C tier, we have Nani. So Nani's only a good pick into other snipers, but if you were to pick Nani early on in the draft, she's just too easy to counter right now. So yeah, that's her only niche, but still against snipers, she's very good. And lastly in the C tier, we have Draco. So Draco was starting to become an A tier brawler in the last meta, and now with a gadget rework, especially considering his last stand gadget just is cooldown so ridiculously long, he's kind of just fell off. He's so easy to take down without that combination with his star power. So yeah, I don't really see much point playing him right now. So now we're going to be moving on to the B tier brawlers. So these are just a bit above average, or more so on the balanced side. And we're going to be starting off with Lola. So she's pretty much the most balanced brawler in the game right now. She's just really good on most game modes. Well, not really good, like average on most game modes. And of course, the healing star power is actually incredibly underrated, and she's getting a Hypercharge pretty soon. I don't think the Hypercharge is broken because it takes so long to charge, but it does look pretty cool. I mean, she's in a good spot. Next to the B tier, we've got Leon. So Leon is definitely climbing up in the meta, and I feel like people are still underappreciating him personally, because you can just spam out the lollipop drop gadget, which is easily one of the best gadgets in the game. He's really good in Brawl Hockey, good in gem grabbing, good in Brawl again. Any map with some really good walls where you can just put that gadget in the back and always get value out of, he's actually a really strong asset. So I think it's getting better, and be prepared for him to even be in the high level of B tier towards the end of his meta. Next up in the B tier, we have Tick. Do I need to say anything about Tick? He's always going to be good at knockout and bounty. Super annoying there, and that's the reason why he's in the B tier. Next up in the B tier, we have Sandy. So Sandy wasn't really impacted too much by all of these changes. Sandy's really good still on those bushier maps, still a really good Hypercharge as well. But time goes on, I think there's starting to be a lot better lane options out there. Next up in the B tier, we have Otis. So Otis is always going to be good in gem grab and Brawl, especially on those bushy maps, because he's really good with the vision gear, and also Also, Fat Splatter's just so good at scouting lanes. Of course, again, he's pretty good as like this flex brawler where he can still compete against some of his counters because he's got a good range of, and of course, he's a good tank counter. So I think Otis in a good spot. Next one to beat it, we have Mandy. So Mandy's hypercharge sometimes can be really broken, and then sometimes it just doesn't even hit anything. I think Mandy's starting to return to the knockout and bounty meta where for some strange reason she just wasn't picked at all by pros last meta. So B tier is pretty fair. For her to reach A tier, she'd have to be good outside of bounty and knockout, and I don't really see that yet. Next one to B tier, we have Finks. So Finks is a hard one because we haven't had the chance to play him in ranked just yet, but I think when it comes to Thursday and we get to try him out, we'll surely know his true potential. I thought he was going to be a lot stronger because when you think of the 3 projectiles, it looked like he could do some insane damage at long range, but his main attack feels really inconsistent. His super as well, I've yet to really get that much value out of it because as soon as someone sees it, they just run away from it. His gadgets as well aren't as strong as I first anticipated. I don't know about Finks. He feels a little bit underwhelming to me. I feel like he could actually go down the rankings. Next up in the beta, we have Cordelius. I feel like he's been stuck here forever. Cordelius is a great option to counter so many annoying compositions. You think of like Kit and any tank, Cordelius is the best counter. You think of Melody, Cordelius is the best counter. And of course, with his jump gadget, he can be pretty good into throws as well. But he's more of a reactionary pick. You never just pick Cordelius because he's the best pro on that map, for example. So yeah, he's always just stuck here in the beta. Next up in B, we have Colette. So of course, Colette's one of the best brawlers in Heist. And then again, if you're looking for a big tank counter out there, a lot of people do tend to go towards Colette, even though I think she's a bit overrated in that sense because she needs more of an open map. She will struggle to scout the bushes, etc., but she's in a good spot. Her hypercharge rate is still really good as well. Yeah, she's a good brawler. Next one to beat it, we have Buster. So Buster's always going to be pretty good in the competitive meta, especially just when you're able to group up effectively. You know, he's a good late pick and knockout and some bounty maps, but I think as time's gone on, he is getting a bit power crept, but he is getting a hypercharge pretty soon, which doesn't look broken, but still the fact that you can charge this just from literally grouping up with your teammates. Imagine this in knockout, for example. Only throwers can really counter it, so I think he's definitely going to be one of the better brawlers in the game once that lands in a few weeks. Next up in the beta, we have Brock. So he's had one of the biggest impacts in this new meta because if you know in knockout, with his big rocket gadget, he's able just to break open the map so easily. He's able to confirm kills a lot easier as well, just like a Piper gadget. I think he's definitely one of the best brawlers in knockout and bounty, as I said, and I've not really seen him much more in other game modes because his main attack is still easy to avoid, and I think if they fixed his hype charge as well, he'd actually be towards the A tier. Next with the B tier, we have 8-bit. So I was finally starting to see 8-bit rise again in the meta just before the balance changes, and I think the meta around him has definitely impacted him a little bit, but he's still such a good gem grab brawler. Again, in Heist is really good. I'm not feeling the impact of him because Heist isn't in ranked right now, but still, he's good there. And of course, there's a lot of instances in like Bounty where you might need this big damage dealer, you pair it with a sniper and a thrower, then he's really hard to push into. His hype charge isn't really that great as well, but he's still a consistent brawler. Next up in the beta, we have Carl. So his hyper charge was the worst inside of a game, and then they reworked it, and I still don't think it's actually that great. I know it charges super fast, it takes 2 supers, but still, I feel like it doesn't actually set people alight when I go over them, which is really weird. And then you've also got to consider the fact that a lot of people can just knock him out of his hypercharge super, which is pretty annoying, but still, because he charges it really fast, he's still good, but I don't think he's got worse or better in the meta because of it. He's just still pretty good. Next in the beta, we have the twins. So Larry is still pretty good in the game right now. When you're just undecided and you're playing on a map like Open Business, Pinball Dreams, you can't really go wrong with the twins because at least they're still good into aggression, but I feel like pros are definitely figuring out more counters to the twins right now, and especially because they haven't got a hypercharge, they just don't make that kind of power play that other throwers do. For example, like Barley with his hypercharge, Berry with his hypercharge. You know, Larry, but he doesn't have that, so he's starting to definitely drag down the ratings a bit. The next up, we have Kit. So if you're watching monthly finals in some regions, pros are just trying to abuse Kit as much as possible because there are some really no-skill cheesy strategies with him, but still at the same time, I think he's only really that effective in knockout and bounty. And I think since the meta changes, he's actually got a bit worse because you have to wait a bit longer to spam out that invisibility gadget. He's still pretty decent. Again, pairing with a tank or anything like that, or with teammates that actually know once you jump onto someone that you need to like kill that person as quickly as possible, which pros abuse in like gem grab, for example, then he's a good brawler. Next with a beta, we have Rico. So I think he's definitely dropped a tier in the meta. I think the map changes definitely have impacted him, but also the hyper charge rate has impacted him. The gadget change, you know, can't just spam out his gadget gadget anymore. So yeah, definitely a lot worse now. Next with the B tier, we have Barley. So Barley is still a really good threat in the meta. He's really good in hot zone right now, but still he can get countered out by the Kenjis, the Mortises, etc. But then you've also got to consider that he can spam out his heal gadget, which is really, really effective. And I put it as one of the best gadgets in the game in my tier list that I did not too long ago. But yeah, I don't really see him as much in knockout anymore as a late pick or just in other instances. So I'm starting to see him drop a little bit. Next up with the B tier, we have Nita. So if you're talking about Europe's draft when they're playing in competitive, they actually use a lot of Nita in Brawl and Gem Grab. I personally don't see it that much because the Nita never has good stats, but I guess it's like once you get in the right space with a Bruce Bear, you just get so much pressure, and pressure wins your game. So she's good for that reason. It only takes 2 supers to get a hypercharge super, which is really effective for wasting the opponent's ammo, so she's still pretty good. Next on the B tier, we have Maisie. So I know Bobby is probably watching this and banging his head against the keyboard, but Bobby, just look at the stats in Europe, the better region. Players do not pick Maisie, okay? They just don't. Pro players in Europe just open their eyes and they can juke out a main attack. I mean, when you think about it, she can be good in like hot zone and Brawl, especially as like a mid, but it just requires you to focus so much playing Maisie, where you can just, especially in this meta, there's brawlers like B, for example, in a mid. You could just spam out the Rattled Hive gadget and you can just win the mid interaction without even thinking. So I think Maisie has got a little bit worse in this meta, but at the same time, if you're looking for someone to really hyper counter, you know, like Poco heal compositions or Barry and Frank, for example, then Maisie can be your brawler. But I still don't think she's good enough. The stats definitely back it up as well. Next up in the B tier, we have Daryl. So he's getting worse and worse as the metas go on, mainly because he's pretty useless until he gets his first super, which is, of course, is 30 seconds, which is just not good enough. You've also got to consider as well, like his hype charge isn't that great. His gadgets aren't good. Even if his gadgets had a super slow cooldown, he wouldn't be that much better, right? So yeah, Daryl was actually negatively impacted by these changes. Next up in the B tier, we have Surge. So I was kind of on the fence whether it's low A tier, high B tier, but I think this is a fair spot for him because, again, the play rates for him are definitely going down a lot, even with the last update. I think he's still good on those bushier maps, but I'm starting to see better options down the lane right now. For example, as a tank counter, I'd rather have like Lou, I'd rather have Griff. There's just better options out there. Lastly, in the B tier, I went with Kenji. So again, I could have easily put Kenji in the low A tier as well. I actually feel like he got a bit worse with the gadget changes. I don't know what it is, because the way I play Kenji is I used to spam the healing gadget like crazy in the first interactions, and then it got to a point, you know, for example in hot zone, where you've used up all your gadgets, well, you're 60% up in the lead anyways. I still think he's a good brawler. I play him a lot in draft, to be fair, to counter like, I don't know, Lou, because when you super, you remove the freeze effect. He's a good counter to throwers as well. I think he's still pretty good. Maybe I'm a bit harsh at B tier. So now I'm going to be moving on to your A tier brawlers, starting off with Frank. Frank is still really good in this meta. I'm not noticing it as much as a previous one, but still as a late pick, if the opponents have a couple of low DPS brawlers, well, of course, you can go Frank because he just has so much HP. His hype charge is so fast. And then when you think about it, a lot of support brawlers are good in this meta. So like Poco, Barry, Gus, they can support Frank really easily, so he's still a menace. Next up in the A tier, we have Pearl, and Pearl is so annoying in a knockout and bounty meta right now. Again, I feel like people underrate her in tier lists, and I don't know why, because she's one of the most picked brawlers when it comes down to that scenario, because you got to think about it. Pearl can be so dangerous against snipers, even though she gets outranged. Get in range of them once and gadget them, and you'll kill them pretty much every time. You can't really go aggressive options in those game modes when you face off against a Pearl, and she's still good in a few other maps and scenarios, you know, like double swoosh and gem grab, etc. I think she's really, really strong. The thing that's letting her down is definitely the hyper charge. Next up in the A tier, we have Squeak, and I believe Squeak is so busted with the wind-up gadget buff. I literally called it as soon as it came out. It felt so incredibly strong. Effective, well, with 2 shots, you can deal like 6.5k damage, I believe, or at least above 6k with the wind-up and then another shot, which is insane. You can 2-shot so many of the mid-brawlers, and people just don't expect it. And then even up close, you can just use this for the double damage, which is insane. Again, I'm just having so much fun with Squeak. I feel like I've won every single game with him, so maybe he's even better than I realized. Next, in the A tier, we have RT. So again, he's one of these brawlers that you can always depend on in the draft and knockout and bounty. There's hardly anything that counters RT at the moment, so for that reason, absolutely got to be at near the A tier. And then, of course, he's still pretty good in like hot zone, still okay in some other scenarios, mainly because his gadget, one click of a button, you can just get it straight the way. And then you think of like other brawlers that have that, you know, like Edge guard, you've got to wait for you just to get 3/4 of your supers. So I think until they nerf that gadget, he'll always be an A tier brawler. Next, in the A tier, we have Angelo. So Angelo is still one of the better brawlers in the game right now. I don't see it as much because in the rank rotation there's no heist, and he was one of the best heist brawlers, but still Angelo's really, really good. His hypercharge is good, everything about him, his gadgets as well. They fixed a bug, essentially making it so before you used to use the gadget that shot through walls with poison, and it actually won't deal any poison damage. Now that's fixed, he's got even better. So in the A tier, we have a Piper. So I think Piper has actually got a little bit better in the meta, mainly because in Bounty and Knockout, now you can spam more homemade recipes. So you think about it, on average, at least 6 gadgets in Bounty, at least like 4 probably gadgets per round in Knockout, which is really, really effective. And it doesn't even need to, like, you don't need to confirm kills all the time with it. You can just gadget for pressure, which is insane. So I think Piper's got better. So in the A tier, we have Amber. So I think she's got a little bit worse in this meta, mainly because as more and more updates come out, all these other brawlers around her are getting hypercharges, but still, she's without a hypercharge and still A tier, which is still incredible. She still does a good amount of damage. You can always rely on Amber in the draft. So in the A tier, we have Byron. So he's still pretty good in this meta. Again, other brawlers around him, support brawlers, have good hypercharges, but his booster shots is really toxic right now, and you can just spam that out like crazy, and your supercharging it is just ridiculous. Instead of really good support brawler in this meta. Next in the A tier, we have Penny. So she got a nerf with her hypercharge rate, but I don't feel like that changed too much with her. It just means it takes a little bit longer to get a hypercharge story, but still, once you set that up, it's pretty much game over, and she's still just consistent across every single game mode. So in the A tier, we have Meeple. So you might be thinking, well, Meeple only got a 0.1 second reload speed buff. Well, the gadget rework also made him super, super toxic. So think about it, his dice gadget is really toxic because not only can you combine it with your super for 3 kills, you can just use it for pressure. What you like to do a lot of time with Meeple on the open map, just throw out this gadget, then use the gadget to push up to the walls that are already existing on the map, and then there you've done it. You've already closed the gap on the range that you probably already was missing. If you get what I mean, you just can't miss his main attack as well. Does a decent amount of damage, and the pros are playing a lot of Meeple. Some pros even saying he's a top 5 brawler in the game, which is a little bit of a stretch, but he's really good in Brawl Hockey as well. Seen him used all the time in a hot zone. I've seen him used in Hideout Bounty, for example. So the pros are loving Meeple at the moment. Next up in the A tier, we have Griff, and Griff is so good in the competitive meta right now, mainly because you compare Griff with just so many brawlers like B, anything that likes a nice open area. Griff is also paired really well with Hank's hypercharge, for example. And then, of course, with the gadget rework, he's able to open up more of the map. His super damage is one of the only things that stops all of his cheesy compositions going on right now. Again, people are abusing like Poco and just tanks and running it down. Well, it's only like Lou and Griff that can really shut that down right now. So I've seen him played so much right now. So in the A tier, we have Gus. So Gus did get nerfed with his damage with the Cookie Popper and his main attack, but it was only 4% nerf, so I still see him played a lot in a lot of different ways, but he's not as good as a first pick anymore. He's still good in Knockout Bounty, Gem Carrier. He's got his instances, but I won't first pick him anymore. So in the A tier, we have Bell. So Bell's always going to be this consistent brawler. Whenever I look at the play rates and scrims and everything else, Bell is always in like the top 15, top 20 brawlers in the game, because again, there's hardly anything that can really counter her out. She's also a great counter to like gene compositions, which are really annoying in Knockout Bounty right now. And again, you know, the hypercharge is still pretty good. Her nest egg is really toxic in Bounty, so she's got better. So next up in the A tier, we have Poco, and Poco is so broken in ranked right now. It's so frustrating facing off against both sides of Poco. So you've got 2 sides of him. You've got the healing side, where you can just run it down against low DPS brawlers. So the most common example is like people go Stu and Juju, or like Stu and Janet, for example, Mr. P, etc. And then you just go Poco and something aggressive, and you just win the game like that with healing. And then you've got his anti-stun gadget, Protective Tunes, which is a great counter to some of the meta brawlers in the game, like Lou, like Ollie with his Hypnotize, like Beaslows, for example, like Amber. Like, there's a lot of counters. Well, Poco counters so many brawlers right now. He's so frustrating. If anything, he could be even better. Next up in the A tier, we have Gray, and Gray with the gadget spammers goes so much better. He's like one of the best brawlers in Brawl Hockey right now. If I was a more competitive game mode, he probably would be S tier right now, but of course, he's got better in Knockout, he's got better in Bounty, he's as good in Hot Zone right now. His hypercharge is really, really broken as well. there's a lot to like about Gray. He's definitely back in the meta. 28 we have Gene, and Gene is so busted in the bounty and knockout meta right now. His gadget spam is crazy. You feel like it only deals 1,600 damage, right? But that's so good considering you can snipe it across the map and you can get off, what, like 6, 7, 8, I don't even know how many, just a crazy amount of these gadgets, which again, it's just all about pressure. If you make the opponents weak, then you can get map control. Of course, his main attack as well chips the opponents down. This vision gear is insane with him. The mythic gear can change games in gem grab. There's so much to like about Gene. So in the 8 tier, we have Berry. If he was thinking about the last meta, he was absolutely an S tier brawler. He probably still should be now, but he's just dumb broken in hot zone right now. You see how fastly he charges his super, his hypercharge, and he didn't get nerfed, which is absolutely crazy. And I'm starting to see a lot more in Brawl, a lot more in gem grab. At every game mode, people are trying this Berry strategy. I think people are finally starting to clock on about him though, and there's maybe just a few brawlers that overwhelm with too much in this meta, but still he's absolutely high A tier. So in the A tier we have Max. So Max's hypercharge rate got nerfed a little bit with the last update, but that's still not stopping Max, because still the hypercharge super itself is so busted. Giving 3/4 of your super to all of your team is just insane. And then of course Max is super versatile, one of the best counters to like B and other brawlers in the mid in like Brawl, gem grab, etc. And again, if you want to go with tank, you can always go Max with it. So a brilliant brawler in this meta. And lastly, in the A tier, I went with Ash. I so badly wanted to put Ash in the S tier, but the thing that's stopping him is that he's only really good in gem grab and Brawl, but he's like one of the best brawlers there. You can pick Ash so early on in the ranked draft. He's just crazy. The fact as well, his chill pill gadget, again, you got unlimited uses. Rotten Banana's really good as well against like some weirder matchups like Frank, for example. His hypercharge super can just break those brawlers that a single shot like B, Stu, you just run all over him. Yeah, he's really good, but if he was good in hot zone, I probably would make him S tier, but he's not used as much there. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the S tier brawlers. So there are a couple of brawlers that are above the S tier, which we'll go into in a minute, but let's start off with B. So B, I think the common consensus is that she's probably an A tier brawler right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and say I think she's S tier right now. The Rattled Hive gadget is so busted, unlimited, just spamming it like crazy, gets you so much map control, and map control can win you the game. The hypercharge as well is really strong. The range on that super is bizarre, and then you can just start just slapping people with 5k 6k damage if you've got the damage gear on as well. It's just crazy. She's a great hot zone brawler. She's a good mid. She's really good in Brawl right now. There's so much to like about B. So next up in the S tier, we've gone with Juju. So Juju is still a really effective brawler in the draft right now. I would say she's starting to have a little bit more weaknesses because her supercharge rate got nerfed by 1 shot. But still, just because her gadget's so broken, and I don't know, there's so much to like about her. Such a versatile thrower. She's still S tier in my opinion. The next up in the S tier, we have Stu, and Stu is just played all of the time in ranked right now. He got a nerf to his gas heal star power, which effectively did nothing, because still his hypercharge, you can cycle like 2 or 3 in a game, which is just far too much. And then you've got to consider as well the gadget rework just made him better. You got unlimited wall breaks, his open zone turret. You're always going to have a turret on the map, because by the time that it's decayed, well, you've got another gadget on the way, which is just bizarre. So you can have like 5 or 6 of these turrets in the back where the opponents just aren't going to destroy him. And of course, he's one of the best brawlers in Brawl Hockey, Gem Grab, Brawl, Hot Zone, you name it, and Stu's there. Next up in the S tier, we have Lou. So he got a hypercharge rate with the last set balance changes, but that pretty much did nothing to him because it feels like his main attack shoots faster. I don't know, again, if I'm just tripping. But anyways, Lou is just still so incredibly busted. He's one of the best counters to any sort of like Poco, Berry nonsense that's going on in this meta. And of course, you got the fact that, again, his hypercharge is still pretty broken. Pros are going both gadgets in this meta, because maybe if you've got an unfortunate matchup where you can switch to the ice block where you can tank a shot and keep yourself surviving. And then of course the 50% freeze is so broken against tanks. You see Lou pretty much everywhere. You even see him as a late pick and knockout to counter like kit nonsense going on. Yeah, Lou is still one of the best brawlers in the game easily. So now moving into the best 5 brawlers in the game right now. At number 5, we're starting off with Melody in the S tier. So I know what you're probably thinking right now. Melody's pretty hard to use, and me myself, I can't play Melody. Most pros can't play Melody, but the top select pros that do know how to play Melody, it's broken. It is so broken. The hypercharge is busted. The fact that it charges your, well, it helps with your gadget, so you get a 60% damage reduction shield, which is like 5k 6k health. And then as well with a fast speed star power, you're just so speedy. The amount of damage that you can put out, yeah, Melody is busted. Of course, you've got to have good internet connection as well to make it work. And not everyone sees the value of Melody, but I really do. Just watch any European scrim tournament and Melody's one of the best brawlers in the game, and I'm really surprised she didn't receive any nerf last update. So moving into the 4th best brawler in the game right now, we have Janet. So I know what people are going to be saying straight away. Well, I always said that Janet was really good. You know, Janet was underrated. I told you guys, no, just shut up. The reason why she's so good is because of the hypercharge, okay? Just stop coping. She was terrible before that. I mean, 2k damage is pretty good, but it's the hypercharge. The hypercharge is so broken. It's so broken. It's crazy. So it's the fact that most pros have figured it out with her tech. If you just don't move a lot, you can just hover over a person, deal like 8k damage, 6k, 8k, whatever it is, and then by the time that you've landed, well, you're one shot off your super again, oh, then you're flying in the air, charging your next hypercharge. It's just a constant cycle. And again, even the tanks that can normally run it down against her, well, even if you run it down against her, you've just charged her hypercharge. Well done. You've just charged one of the most broken hypercharges in the game, and then she's just going to go off to one of her better matchups and kill them in the air. Can't even counter it. And then, of course, you got the gadget that stops you from regenning, scouting bushes. Yeah, she's absolutely a top 5 brawler in this game. So now we're going to be moving into the 3rd best brawler in the game, and this is going to be a tier above the S tier. This is in the nerf, please, because these 3 brawlers are by far the best 3 brawlers in the game right now. At number 3, we have Mr. P. So I know what people are thinking straight away. Mr. P is the best brawler in the game. Oh, he's so good. His hypercharge is broken, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it is broken. Absolutely broken. The big thing that's stopping him from excelling even more is that it takes such a long time to get the hypercharge. It really does. But by the time you get it, it's game over. So if you can just last, I don't know, say in gem grab, but a lot of the time I don't get it until like an enemy's close to getting 10 gems or your team is close. But when you get it, it changes the game completely. And then you've got to consider the fact that with the gadget rework, you can just spam portal reinforcements out. So yeah, the hypercharge is busted. It's so broken and definitely needs a nerf. You're never going to get the hypercharge super and knockout and bounty where he was good in previously. I don't know. Some people are overrating him, but at the same time, I still think he's a top 3 brawler in the game and definitely broken and definitely needs an emergency nerf to that hypercharge. So now moving on to the 2nd best brawler in the game right now, we have Hank. I know what you guys are thinking straight away. Well, you underrated Hank, blah, 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 blah. Hank isn't that good. He's counterable, you know, on maps with a lot of walls. You can counter him because his hypercharge doesn't get a lot of value. Well, let's just face it, Hank is broken. He's played the most in scrims right now with the highest win rate. So, of course, Hank is really good. In ranked, everybody's just banning Hank straight away. Scrims, people are just banning Hank straight away because he's so good everywhere. And if you open up the map, he's even better. The hypercharge super doesn't miss. It takes like 2.4 supers to get, I believe, which you can charge through your tank trait. And then as well, your super heals you up as well. It's really hard to go into a Hank because, of course, with his super, he can defend himself against aggro. You've also got unlimited spam with his shield gadget. I'm not joking. I'm really not joking when I'm saying this. You guys might think I'm biased with Hank. He's absolutely a top 3 brawler in the game, and most pros are saying he's the best brawler in the game. So just going to show how broken his hypercharge really is. It does need an emergency nerf. It homes in too much. Again, if it's overtime, if it's an open map, you just click purple button and your team wipes. So of course that's broken, guys. And like when you're saying the hypercharge doesn't hit people on maps with a lot of walls, well, that doesn't matter because then Hank's just good with his main attack there. Anyway, you pair Hank with a healer or any support brawler, it's game over. You're not countering him. Now moving into the best brawler in the game, in my opinion, is going to be Ollie. So I think the top 3 are interchangeable depending on someone's opinion. They're absolutely the best 3, but in my opinion, I think Ollie's the best brawler in the game because I don't think I've lost a single game with Ollie. I know that sometimes you can run it down against him because he isn't like the highest DPS brawler in the game, but still, the damage buff to him was insane. 2k damage now is crazy. Removing the self move, again, insane. And the reason why he's so good is because he's the tank that can dash. Like, just creating space in competitive is one of the best things you can do. Just creating pressure, and that dash always is going to be a threat. If you see Ollie with super, you know you've got to back away. He's also got the tank trait as well, which is going to help him cycle through his supers more. And then the biggest reason why he's so broken is because you can dash forward, and then you can use the jump gadget regulate, and then land onto someone, and then by the time you've landed with that gadget, you're going to hypnotize them for 3.5 seconds. By that time, you can kind of line up, like, again, you can line up 2 enemies and just cycle your super a lot more effectively. Again, like, he's one of the tankiest brawlers in the game with a 4k HP shield. There's so much to like about Ollie. He absolutely is one of the best 3 brawlers in the game. It might take you a little bit of a while to get used to his main attack and everything like that, but trust me, I'm really can't stress this so much how broken he is and how much I've been abusing him in ranked. Every single time I play him again, I win every game. So try him out more, guys. Seriously, he's so good. So that's going to be it Hope you guys enjoyed. That's going to be the tier list on the list. And a lot of things have changed, but I really can't stress this enough. Try out these 3 brawlers at the nerf please list. They're broken, guys. They're probably going to get emergency nerf pretty soon. But that's going to be it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.